Hi, I'm Brandice Canes-Wrone, Professor of Political Science, and Maurice R. Greenberg, Senior Fellow of the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. I'm here today as a board member of the American Academy of Sciences and Letters to speak with Marianne Bertrand, who is the Chris P. Dialynas Distinguished Service Professor of Economics at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Marianne won one of the 2024 Berry Prizes for Distinguished Intellectual Achievement from the AASL. That's the American Academy of Sciences and Letters. Marianne, you've written a good deal of path-breaking work that has received attention both inside the Academy and in the news. These days, the Academy writ large is a major news topic, for better or worse, unfortunately, not necessarily for better in many cases. And there are large cuts proposed for research funding across many fields. So I thought we could start off today by talking about what are some of the underappreciated ways the work done in your field of economics contributes to human understanding and well-being.
Thanks for the introduction, Brandice. I would say, it's hard for me to exactly figure out what people think about what economics is and what economists study. I have a sense from talking to young people that they think economics is just about studying markets and interest rates and maybe about ways of making money. So obviously, it's a much broader field than that. And the kind of questions that, kind of really interest us as economists are very centrally about thinking about, human well-being, and how to improve it. So I can, give a few examples, but just to make sure that we're all on the same page. I think a big part of what applied microeconomists, kind of do is to think about public policy and try to think about how to do good public policy. And that means that we think about, those questions sometimes with theory, but really more and more often with data, and try to evaluate kind of the cost and benefits of various approaches, with the goal again to try to inform policymakers as they think about whether or not a given policy is the right one. So we also think a lot about decision making. I think economics used to be kind of set in old views about the ways people make decisions, this kind of concept of hyper rationality that drives all of us, and often was kind of maybe making wrong recommendations because we were so much driven by these views of extreme rationality. I think economics has made huge advances over the last couple of decades in delivering models of individual decision making that are much better approximation of the way people really think about important matters, like how they're going to be investing their money, whether they're going to get married, whether or not they're going to get an education. So I view our field as very centrally about how to use data and insights and kind of clear thinking about to improve people's well-being.
Right. What do you see as one of the two or most, one or two, I should say, most important challenges for maintaining high intellectual standards in your field?
That's a great question. I would say, I would highlight the two following things. I think one has been an amazing kind of development, but that also has kind of downsides that one needs to think about, is that our field has become extremely data rich. It used to be historically that all of the data that would be relying on would be administrative data sets, kind of a census data set. In labor, we have a lot of data sets that are coming from the Department of Labor. We have now more and more other sources of data that are making their way into our discipline, which is great because it allows us to study new questions that were not just on the table before. It creates issues in terms of replicability of research, is that very often these data sets kind of are not made publicly available. A given researcher has got a relationship with a particular data partner, and that relationship cannot be extended to everybody in the field. So it creates some of these tensions about replicability of the work. I think the journals are doing, I think, as good of a job as they could to try to handle this tension. We don't want to restrain this research, but we really want to make sure things are can be stress tested by others. I think another issue, which I think again kind of goes hand in hand with this great development of more data, is just how do we control researchers, practices that may be sometimes driven by their own desire to get their work published their own incentive. So, there's lots of discussion of data mining, p-hacking, and things of that sort, which, again, creates some difficulties as one thing to assess, the quality of the work. Again, I think the journals are doing a really, really good job. So we have now the spread of these pre-analysis plan where researchers essentially kind of tie their hand before analyzing data as to what kind of analysis they're going to be doing, which very much reduces the ability to data mine. But I would say some parts of economics have been more exposed to these kind of pre-analysis plans than others, and pre-analysis plans also come with their own downsides. So on the one hand, they tie people's hands. On the other hand, it is very often by probing the data, then one discovers new things. So it's a tension that I think the field is doing its best to try to address.
Great. And one of the criticisms that's come out of not specifically economics, but the university writ large has been that they've lost their way in terms of their mission. And this is an area where I know most of your, at least from the outside, most of your time seems, spent on research and teaching. You actually were a committee member of the very influential Chicago Principles, if I correct, yes, which have spread to now for freedom of speech and expression on universities, and those have spread to many universities now, have adopted them. How would you describe what the mission of the university ought to be, and why is that important? How can we get that out from both inside the academy and then, of course, to those outside of it?
Yeah, I mean, defining the mission of the university, it's funny, kind of, I've been in this business for a quarter of a century. I never thought that I sit back to try to kind of define the mission. I think we want to seek the truth, and we want to do that in order to help society progress, help push forward new innovation, help push forward new ideas. I think that should be our main goal. You mentioned the Chicago Principle. I think the Chicago Principle, and obviously, as you can imagine, we've had a lot of conversation on campus about the Chicago Principles over the last few months. I'm assuming you guys have as well. The Chicago Principles never quite fully articulated why we cared so much about freedom of expression, which is very much central to the university. My understanding is that unwritten was we care about freedom of expression because we think it will get us to get closer to the truth, which is kind of interesting per se, because that is kind of a bit of an empirical question, which is one of the things that came out of some of the, the many conversations I've been on campus surrounding this. I think we want to have debate. But sometimes some ideas are just really poorly founded, and kind of maybe we don't want to spend so much time debating them. So there's a tension, but I think the ultimate goal certainly is the pursuit of the truth.
Thanks. We're in agreement, though I realize part of freedom of expression is some of those who are listening may or may not agree with us. Thanks so much for all your contributions to the field of economics, to the whole enterprise of university truth seeking, and it's been wonderful to speak with you today.
Thank you so much, Brandice.